From being a companion you can rely on in the Final Fantasy series, to its own person seeking adventure and riches, let's follow the exploits of Chocobo in Chocobo's Dungeon 2. Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is a dungeon crawling RPG developed and published by Squaresoft on December 23, 1998 in Japan. Oddly enough, unlike its predecessor, Chocobo's Mysterious Dungeon, this sequel also ended up being released in the US on November 30th, 1999. Chocobo's Dungeon was during a time when I was so in love with the Final Fantasy series and these mountable creatures as a kid that I always looked up pictures of it on the internet hoping one day to find a copy to play for myself. So with that said, let's give this game a shot and let's see what all the fuss is about. In Chocobo's Dungeon 2 you play as Chocobo, who embarks on a journey with his pal Mog for adventure and riches, and that's it. There's not much else going on in the story since it's mostly a dungeon crawler, but that doesn't take away from the enjoyment I had spelunking into the depths to fight monsters and earn riches. Chocobo's Dungeon 2 will run you around 18 hours, which is pretty surprising to me given the gameplay of this game and the lack of a thorough story. But I suppose with the dungeons being randomly generated that could also add to the time. So with that said, let's check out the graphics of the game and see how they stack up. The graphics for Chocobo's Dungeon 2 are charming with a vintage nostalgic look to them. It's a style that doesn't seem to age badly and lends itself well to those who enjoyed the quirky graphics of the past when 3D-ish games like this were on the rise. It's like a pre-rendered 3D model sprite mix thing that I wish I could explain better, but if you know what I'm talking about, it's the same as the graphics from the Ogre Battle 64 episode we covered a long time ago. It's a graphical art style I admire and miss so much and would totally be on board with some indie developer bringing the style back in the future. The designs for Chocobo and Mog are cute and the designs for the other monsters cross that threshold as well, with other monsters like Bahamut and Behemoth still having a coolness factor to them despite the chibi SD look. I'd say this is one of the better looking games from back in that era of gaming, and one that I will forever admire. Clearly the game looks great, but does the music match up? The music for Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is exactly what you'd expect from a cutesy RPG like this. It's very cheery, charming, and some tracks include the iconic Chocobo's theme in the mix. Of course, Chocobo being a Final Fantasy property, you can already expect the music to be top notch, and this game is no exception to that rule. There's a lot to listen to and enjoy in Chocobo's Dungeon 2, and honestly its music combined with its visuals will surely help the gameplay for a complete package. The gameplay for Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is pretty simplistic and fun, but with a bit of strategy in it to not make it a complete cakewalk for you. You start the dungeon with a few items to help you out and quickly realize the importance of items and storage management. One example is how saving in this game is not done by save points like in mainline Final Fantasy games for the most part, but rather with an item that allows you to save upon descending into the next floor of a dungeon. You also have other items that take up your inventory space, like an item to reveal the entire map of the current floor, various nuts and potions with random effects while unidentified as well. With this in mind, you'll want to find ways to discard items you don't have any use for to make more space for the items you do need. Some ways to manage inventory could be simply dropping an item, or if an enemy is nearby, you can kick the item to them to cause the effect of the item to trigger on the enemy itself. You also have these recycling boxes around that, when you drop 2 items in there, ends up giving you a new random item in return. Not sure if there's any specific items you can drop for specific things, however, so just assume it's random and only dump in things you don't need. You also should be wary of traps in dungeons, as there's quite a few out there that can surprise you and mix you up if you're not careful. Some will put you to sleep, silence you, throw you in the air, and even a cool one that polymorphs you into a random enemy monster. Though while transformed, you cannot use any other functions except for moving and attacking, so be sure to avoid trouble until it wears off if you can help it. This game plays like a turn-based in an odd sort of way, where each step you take counts as a turn. You can position yourself with 8 directions to help you aim your attacks, while also means you can be hit from almost any angle as well. You should also be wary of the energy you spend in the game, as the more you walk, the more energy you lose. I haven't lost energy in my time of playing, so I cannot say what would happen, but I can assume you'd be booted from the dungeon if that happens. That, along with your HP falling to 0, is really bad, because once you get booted from the dungeon, any items you carried with you disappear as well. So make sure you grab those claws and saddles to equip to help yourself level up more to best these dungeons, and you'll be alright. Chocobo's Dungeons 2 gameplay may be simplistic, but it's still fun, has a bit of strategy in it to make things fun. Couple that with its nice visuals and cheery music, and you have yourself a game that's actually fun to play. Chocobo's Dungeon 2 is a nostalgic hit for me since I was a kid, so of course my bias will probably make me hype this game up to be better than what it is. But a big reason I even made this show is because every game I make an episode for is a game I think you should give a shot, regardless of the flaws I point out in some of them. In the end, games like Chocobo's Dungeon 2 that lack in story but make up for it in gameplay are a nice change of pace when everyone wants to wow you with a cinematic storytelling experience. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, I hope you drop a like, subscribe for more UnderRadar, and share this video around if you think we need more UnderRadar in the world. Thank you guys for another fantastic episode of UnderRadar, and I'll see you on the next one.